This is the Balancing Act by Security Compass, your guide to going fast while staying safe in today's digital world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our podcast. Our guest today is Kyle Lai. Kyle, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Wonderful. Kyle, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about your background and what you do?
Yes, my name is Kyle Lai with KLC Consulting. I'm the President and Chief Information Security Officer. So KLC Consulting has been in business about 20 years. So our focus today is to help companies to meet the CMMC, DFARS, and the NIST 800-171 certification. So we're helping companies to prepare for that certification and some of the cybersecurity requirements. Myself, I've been in business, cybersecurity business for about 20 years or so, and I've been doing different type of security, from penetration testing, third-party security to application security, but most recently, focusing on the CMMC, NIST, and the 800-171 and the DFARS. Before that, I've been cybersecurity advisor and the chief information security officer for several companies. So several of the Fortune 500 companies, but
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's great. Also privileged to have you with us. Why don't we just dive right into our discussion then? We talk about CMMC. We know that it's moving forward. When you look at it from your perspective, Kyle, who typically owns the CMMC program in an organization?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the size and the structure of the organization. So I have seen some organization, if there are larger companies, that usually there is a chief compliance officer or director of compliance, or there could be falling into the CIO's office, right? Chief information security, chief information officer, and sometimes the CISO's office to handle the compliance. I would say, sometimes the compliance officer, they are falling into the legal department. So I think it really depends on the organization. But if we are talking about some smaller organizations, I would say most likely they'll fall into the IT director or the CIO's office for the smaller firms.
Interesting. So yeah. This kind of touches a little bit on the governance of the program itself to make sure that we're making the right investments to ensure compliance for CMMC. Can you talk a little bit about the top challenges that you see as organizations try to achieve CMMC compliance?
Yeah, I will say there is always comes to a clear understanding of what are the CMMC requirements, because there are, unfortunately, there are quite a bit of misinformation on the internet, right? So there are always hearing something that's just a little bit off, not really what the CMMC is required for it. And people are just getting a lot of misinformation. So sometimes it's very difficult to get a clear understanding in terms of exactly what do we actually need for CMMC. There is a CMMC assessment guide, but it's 400 pages, right? It's really big, not for everyone to read through it. So I think that has become a challenge. Also, getting time from a very busy IT team already, that is actually a very big challenge, because most of the companies, they have a very lean IT team, and they're already dealing with a lot of activity. So sometimes when we're talking to our clients, they're talking about we actually have this plan of action milestone, some of the deficiencies, IT have to deal with. But it's IT is really swamped with all these, new vulnerabilities, patches. They just don't have time. So that's, especially for the smaller firms, that become a big challenge, because just cannot get the time from the IT, or sometimes they just have to outsource the entire IT team, right, to the outside company, and they just cannot afford to spend more money or time to actually get this program going. So it is a challenge, and also the cost. I think it's all end up to the cost, right? CMMC is not cheap. It's have 130 controls, practices you have to do. You have to also do the policy, procedures, and plans. You have to create them, right? It takes time and efforts. So yeah, and add up to be just the cost. And yeah, I think, and on top of that, you have the cost of the certification. So I think the budgeting, you have to actually budget for what is the cost for the final assessment, right? Final assessment to get the certification. So it becomes a big challenge around the cost. And DoD and the Congress have, they have, conducted a hearing, well, with a small business leaders, and they are talking about making it CMMC a little bit more affordable for the small businesses, because it is actually a top challenge, the cost.
That's interesting. So, let's dive a little bit deeper here for a moment, Kyle. I mean, we've got so many different compliance requirements. We've got, DFARS, we've got CMMC, we've got NIST 800-171. We've got all these, controls and policies that we need to develop. What should we focus on? How do you walk us through the process of an organization that is trying to determine how to prioritize all of this?
Yeah, so if you actually have to take a look at CMMC, it's not going to be really fully rolled out until 2026, right? So what is something that's more real? That is something that is in your contract today. It's actually DFARS, right? Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, DFARS 7012 or 252-204-7012. Right, 7012, 7019, 7020. What this number means is that you have to implement what they call NIST 800-171. This is to protect the control unclassified information in the contractor's environment, right, in your contractor's system or subcontractor system. So this is something that's already in place since 2018, and this has already been in your contract. And this is something that you have to focus on today. CMMC is built on top of all these, is built on top of NIST 800-171. So if you have if you are compliant with DFARS 7012, 19, and 20, then you will be 95% there, in compliance with the CMMC. So let's focus on that. What it is that you have to make sure that you comply with 110 controls specified in the NIST 800-171. And it's still not an easy task to meet all the 800-171. But what you have to do is do a quick self-assessment, understanding what you have, done so far, and document the deficiencies in what they call the plan of action and milestone, or POAM, right? And so you document what you are doing already. That's in the system security plan. So document what you are doing, and also, report to the DFARS 7019 and 7020. Those are the requirements that you have to report your assessment results, right? DoD have the assessment methodology, so you will just plug in, hey, I'm not in compliance, we have a deficiency in this area. You will actually generate the assessment score. That's what you report to the DoD SPRS system. When you have done this, you are already in compliance with what is in the contract, in your contracts today, right, for the DFARS requirements. So then you give yourself about 12 months. That's what I usually would suggest. Give yourself 12 months to work towards the compliance of NIST 800-171 or getting close to it. That will help you to become compliant, give yourself some time, pace yourself, give yourself plenty of time. You don't want to rush through, and you can put in some, some monthly plan, monthly achievement that you want to achieve throughout that next 12 months. So I think this is something that's more achievable, right? So once you actually get to the complete the NIST 800-171, the 110 controls or close to it, you are 90 or 95% there in complying with CMMC. So I think this gives you a better roadmap. What you don't want to is somebody actually ask you to have a CMMC compliance in 5 months, and then you're kind of it's already been very stressful, and you're kind of rushing yourself, and at the end you're probably not going to have a really good outcome. So pace yourself, give yourself plenty of time, have a solid plan in terms of what you want to achieve monthly for the next 12 months. I think that's a better place to start.
Yeah, that's interesting. And in your experience, once organizations have started to go down this path, and they're looking to achieve compliance, is it difficult to continue on an ongoing basis to maintain this? Does it get easier once you go through that initial period of trying to achieve that compliance?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how you approach it. If you have built your security practices into your daily operations, I think it will make it a lot easier for you to keep up with all these requirements, right? If you actually only doing this as a one-time exercise, you want to wait until 3 years later, do it again, I think it will become very difficult. So for example, right, if you want to have an incident response plan, keep up with it, you want to do this maybe every 6 months or a year, you want to update your plan and make sure you do some exercise, right, to make sure that the plan is still active. So if you actually upkeep with this planning, it's not going to be too difficult, right? And if you have a change of your plan, change of your procedures, of your or within this, because you have to do this every 3 years, right? Certification every 3 years. But if you actually get a new equipment or new tools, new endpoint protection tools within this 3 years, you update your process, update your procedure on how do you manage manage these tool, and how do you actually, what is your standard procedure on operating these tools, right? If you actually keep up with all the procedures, the process, and train the people, keep up the records of that, keep up with the records, the evidence showing that you are doing all the necessary things that that need to do to stay in compliance, that will actually help. So I think it really depends. My recommendation, obviously, is to do as much documentation as you go, update your policy procedures as you go. That will actually help you keep, maintain your compliance. You don't have to rush through the end of the third, at the end of the 3rd year to go through this again.
Yeah. So, I mean, you go in, your organization goes in and you perform audits. So, as you're looking at different teams, do you find there's a difference with teams that would emphasize manual policies and procedures versus automated ways of doing things? Is there any difference? Should we be striving towards greater automation to make it easier for a future audit, or is it largely the same in terms of an effort?
Yeah, I think it will be a lot easier. Automation is definitely the better way to go, right? So, yeah, I know we're talking about like having GRC, GRC system that help you maintain your policy procedures and processes. It's better to have a system, collect the evidence, that is actually just a better way. So when an auditor actually going into assess or doing the audit, then they can actually just take a look at your GRC system and pull, be very clear in terms of what you're doing for each of the practice, right? And they can actually see what are the procedures, policies associated with each of the practice, and also take a look at the evidence. You probably describe how you actually generate the evidence, or actually have a screenshot or something that's showing as evidence. You'll be very clearly laid out in the GRC system. Right now, I think a lot of companies, they are still using the Excel spreadsheet to start with, because that's the easiest way to get started. But at the end, you need to cross-reference so many different things. It will be a lot easier to have the automated system that help you to keep track of all the different pieces of information you need for the CMMC or this 171.
Yeah, interesting. Let's project out a little bit. Maybe looking at the future, not too far out, but a couple of years, 3 years out. What are your thoughts, Kyle? Where do you see us heading with all of this. Any thoughts or opinions on that?
Yeah, I think the initial, so DoD, they are trying to get this all ironed out, right? So they are trying to do this in September 2021. They're trying to have a new issue, trying to finalize the CMMC. I'm not sure if that's a aggressive timeline, but at least that's what is being projected, right? So I think it will take, I will say, a couple of years, because then there's the entire ecosystem within this CMMC. You have to have an assessor organizations in place, and you have to figure out if there's if I'm the organization getting assessed and I failed, I want to challenge what is the process for challenging my results, right? So I think there are still a lot of these need to be figured out. But once it's figured out, maybe in a couple of years, I think DoD can say, yeah, it's actually very, very solid process. We know exactly what to do with the CMMC. And I think at that time, other organizations, other agencies, federal agencies are going to look at it and consider adopting it. I know we're already seeing that outside of DoD, there's the talk from Department of Homeland Security, but more importantly, the GSA. GSA is the organization that, kind of a GSA schedule is the contract. So they already have a statement saying that in 5 years, by 2026, in 5 years after the renewal, at the time of the renewal, in 5 years, they are going to require CMMC level 1 as a minimum requirement. So you can see some other organizations, some other agencies, they are starting to adopt. So I wouldn't be surprised once DoD figure out all the processes, working out all the issues with the CMMC. I think other agencies, they should be able to look at it and consider adapting.
Wonderful. And there's so much more that we can talk about on this. Kyle, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate you coming in, sharing your thoughts, your insights with our audience.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Want to learn about what Security Compass has to offer? Check out securitycompass.com/demo for a free demo today. Want more of the balancing act? Be sure to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts for more episodes.